Accessing library computer data.
Out there are no saints, just people.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. We're continuing our run through DS9. We are up to Season 2, Episode 3. It's called The Siege. It is the part 3 of 3 episodes of the Bajoran Coup arc. It aired back on October 10th, 1993. It was written by Michael Piller, directed by Weinrich Colby, and that's pretty much it. The description, anyway. Cisco tries to prevent the Circle from taking the station. Kira and Dax take proof that the Cardassians are the real force that is arming the Circle to Bajoran government. Clay, how are you?
I'm good. I'm wondering where all the people on the space station went, though.
They went to multiple places, yeah.
Well, they evacuated everybody who wasn't Bajoran, right?
Yes, and it
Then
seems like some Bajorans who wanted to go got off. But
then there was only like 5 people left on the ship?
Yes, right. There's only a handful of people that Cisco gives his pep talk to in the morning.
Sure.
Well, I guess we'll get into it. But this is wrapping up the first 3-parter in Star Trek history. We're going to be talking about The Siege right after this.
Starfleet feels it has no other choice. The Federation is here at the invitation of the Bajoran Provisional Government.
No more provisional government, no more invitation.
Governments can break off relations with an edict. It's not so easy when it comes down to our level.
All right, Clay, so I think that this is one of those episodes I was watching it, and I was going, this is fine. This is fine. And maybe that I might not even have been that excited. I was just going, this is fine. And then I stopped, and I thought about it for 5 minutes after it ended, and I was like, that actually really wasn't all that good. So so where do you stand on this one? I think that this is kind of a weird episode, and I guess we'll talk about this one, and we'll just talk about the entire sort of 3-episode arc, when you need to. But, The Siege is just the action-packed wrap-up to the thing. And it almost feels like all the storylines were pretty much done after the second episode, and they just had to have this sort of siege thing go on. There's a lot of episodes with the title with the word siege in it in DS9 too, which is kind of funny. But what'd you think of this one?
I kind of had the same feeling. It's funny, the stuff I actually liked the most kind of felt like the biggest pieces of filler. Because you would assume soaring into the third part of your trilogy of episodes here, everything would be, the ball's rolling down the hill and you're kind of barreling towards the finish line. But they have a lot of time in this episode before anything really happens where people are just like talking about stuff. And, you've got people talking about what's his name? Jake and Nog. Is that his name?
Yep.
Yeah. Talking about how they're getting split up, and you have an extended sequence where they talk about food.
Yep.
Which was weird because I was like, what the hell is going on here? But at the same time, I'm like, I actually kind of enjoy this.
Yeah, that scene is actually very good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just weird because it's like in an episode called Siege, they don't show up until like halfway through the episode, and then they're just kind of wandering around the hallways for 20 minutes, and then it's just over.
I don't think that what happens here actually fits the definition of a siege. They're not actually sieging the station. They just kind of get on it and invade it, and there's very little resistance to them. So I think it's a not appropriate title, actually.
No, it's not a siege at all. It would be a siege if they never get on the ship,
right,
never get on the station, and they just stop anything from coming in or out.
And then the food conversation would make more sense because it would be months of them on the station eating all their food and getting down to the rations. Yeah.
Right. And I was thinking as I was watching, and I was like, maybe they should have stretched it to 4, because it could have, you could have gotten into that stuff if they wanted to, but I don't know. Maybe they clearly didn't.
Yeah.
I think that's the problem is there's not room to do that in this episode because the siege is not the point of the story. The point of the story is wrapping up the whole Bajoran Cardassian arms deal angle, and spending another episode where the Deep Space Nine is under siege with like 5 people on it is not worth spending the time doing. But yeah, I thought it was okay. it was, again, I think I had the exact same reaction you did, where I was watching, I was going, yeah, this is pretty good. And then afterwards, I was like, that was, I guess it needed to happen.
Yeah, that's right. It wrapped up. I see you mentioned you thought the best scenes were filler. I kind of feel the entire episode is weirdly filler. Like, I feel like none of it, except for the fact that what you were saying, the whole important angle is that Kira and Dax bring that evidence to the Bajoran government and show them that the Cardassians are in on it and the Circle's in on it.
Yeah. That
is resolved in like the last 3 minutes so sloppily in a lot of ways that it's like, really? That's how the episode is going to wrap up? Just like that? She just hands over the thing and it's over? But their entire journey feels like filler to me.
Yeah.
It's like they get on this old ship. They're kind of flying around. They're shooting stuff. They crash. Kira breaks her hip. They meet Bareil. He fixes her hip, and then they just walk to the government and they hand it in. It feels all very silly, and it
reminded me of a certain, I don't think you've seen it yet, but it reminded me of a certain subplot in the new Star Wars movie. A lot, actually.
Oh, the casino subplot, I assume you're talking
yes.
about.
Yeah.
I have not seen it, but I know that that's what people complain about. To me, the problem with this Siege episode is I think I understand that. I kind of agree that maybe they should have done another episode out of this, because the things that I think or
like 5.
Yeah,
sorry.
Right. Just make the season.
But like a Siege. The Siege could have been like a cool first 5 episodes of the season. Just but whatever. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, the problem is that when you jam all this stuff into one episode, I feel that they really. There's scenes in this one that I like and scenes that I don't like. Like, if I were to go through this quickly, I really like Sisko's opening talk with the pep talk to the Starfleet officers that are staying.
Yep.
Mostly because he gives the very cliche, you don't have to stay, I'm not going to hold it against you, leave now if you want to leave thing. Sisko, I feel, actually delivers that line in a way that makes me feel he actually does not care if the people go with their families. At that point, like him being a father himself kind of helps sell that a little bit. Like it's not perfunctory. Like if Kirk were saying it, I don't really take Kirk seriously. Kirk would expect everyone to stay there with him.
Yeah, and Kirk does it in more of like a mocking tone.
Sure, yes, yeah. And Sisko, you get the sense that he actually wants it to go on. We have a lot of goodbye scenes, and to me, one of the biggest weaknesses of this is that the goodbye scenes, all of the goodbye scenes to me are not very good at all. Like they're so rushed because they don't have the time to do things. The O'Briens should divorce after their goodbye scene here, because that is the worst goodbye between husband and wife and a child. And O'Brien's rationale for staying is horrible. He has no reason to stay there whatsoever.
His rationale is to the extent of like, but Sisko said he's going to order pizza.
Well, he's got those rations. I love those rations. They're going to be out there. I mean, we'll touch on those two, but the Nog and Jake thing is okay. That's kind of a goodbye, but the characters aren't separated long enough to make you feel that this goodbye actually means something.
Yeah.
And not to spoil it, but they do. They sort of redo this storyline in a later season, and they do it much better, where they stretch it out and the characters are away from each other for a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think that feels more natural. And I mean, given the way the series is going, it feels like it would be well suited to that. It was actually a part of me that was actually kind of thinking at the end, when people start to come back or whatever, that O'Brien's family wouldn't be there.
They don't even show them.
Yeah. I thought there was going to be a moment where, like, everybody's coming back and hugging, and then, Keiko and what's the kid's name? I don't know what Molly.
Yeah.
Just aren't there, and have this little sad beat for O'Brien where he's like, oh, maybe I made a mistake or whatever.
I mean, if I was rewriting this, I would have O'Brien leave. I would have it be kind of a crisis of conscience type thing, but I think he makes the wrong decision here to stay on the station, especially because what he ends up doing is not all that important. Like, if he had died over this, is it worth it? Like, for the amount of danger that they're in, I'm not sure that the episode really sells why it's a good decision for the Federation to stay here.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't really focus on that at all, really. It's just sort of like...
Like, what's your sense? They're just staying to protect the Bajorans who can't be basically the non-fundamentalist Bajorans. That's the only thing I can really come up with, that they don't want to just leave. They don't want to, turn tail and be seen as the sort of cowards who couldn't stay there to protect the Bajorans that had asked them to be there in the first place.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't really thought about that much, because as I was watching it, the only thing that I could really pin it on was needing to buy time in order to get that information down to the Bajoran people.
Oh, sure.
Or
yeah.
the council or whatever. I actually am not sure what the overarching. It's been a while since I watched the last one, but you know what else didn't help? The previously on Deep Space Nine thing was not in chronological order.
No,
it was just because I was like, oh, good, it's been a while since I've watched these. This will remind me, and then it was just jumping around doing the X, Y, and Z. Like they have
by
the
character. I think it went like through each character's story.
Okay. Yeah. Because like one of the last things they do is that scene where Sisko is deciding whether or not it's worth sending Kira down to save what the hell's his name?
Lee Nallis.
Lee Nallis. And I was like, wait, but that was like in the first episode. This is I'm losing track of how all this stuff happened. But yeah, I couldn't. They didn't really play it up at all. Like, for the in the last episode we talked about the great scene with Sisko and the Admiral, where they're debating the merits of staying versus going, and the Admiral's reacting in a very sort of strategic
Starfleet way.
Yeah, Starfleet way, where Sisko is doing the yes sir, but fingers crossed behind his back kind of thing. They never really follow that up with anything. Like, there's no, I guess, just that first scene where they're talking about, if you want to leave, you can leave kind of thing. Like, there's no reason for you to stay, or we're not acting within the boundaries of the law or Starfleet or whatever.
Yeah.
But they don't really touch on that. I was kind of expecting some of that to come back, like towards the end or something, or at least have another conversation
at the very end. Yeah.
Yeah, have some sort of conversation with the Admiral. But I think there's so much stuff that they need to tie up here, or at least they feel like they need to tie up, that some of that stuff falls by the wayside. Like I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it, but I don't think they needed to. I don't think killing Lee Nallis was absolutely necessary. I mean, it's not much of a bang ending, but it seems like this. Is this going to be the hallmark of episodes with guest stars playing important characters as they all get killed by a faceless assassin in the last 30 seconds?
A few of them, yeah, a few of them.
Are the remaining members of the cast of Wings going to show up to kill off all these other characters?
Steven Weber is terrible in this episode, like shockingly to me. He's very, very bad in this. I don't really understand.
Yeah, I wrote down in my notes that I was surprised that he was playing this character, because I felt like they wasted him.
Yes.
And then I wrote, this is the first time I think I've ever thought someone wasted Steven Weber.
I mean, this was at the heights of Wings. He came in off a busy Wings schedule to come in and play the second in command. Yeah.
You've got the star of Wings playing the second in command, but the guy playing the first in command is the dad from Monster Squad, and that's about it.
Oh, sure. He's actually good, though. I like the actor.
He is.
In this.
I do.
Yeah.
I like him. Yeah. I've seen him in one or two other things, and he's usually consistently pretty good.
And I think that just sort of the character use here. We'll talk about Lee Nallis, I suppose, for a little bit, because in our first couple episodes, we thought that by episode 2, The Circle, his story had kind of stalled out. Like, he didn't have a lot to do. He was just standing around on the station. Here, I feel it's the same thing. He gives that speech that convinces I can't tell if that speech is good. When he comes to the docking bay and he rescues Sisko from the Bajorans, and he says, like, he gives that rousing speech and then kind of walks off. Yeah. Was that good or was that bad?
I don't know, because as far as a revolutionary goes, he's very subdued in his mannerisms.
Yes, yeah.
He's very. I think we may have talked about. No, I was talking about the Vedics a couple episodes ago, but he was. Yeah, he doesn't really have a lot of. I mean, I understand that his character is supposed to be, reticent of the role that he's playing
and built on a lie. So his
But at the same time, it's like he's got to have a bit of an oomph when he needs it, But I guess it doesn't matter if it was good because it worked. I guess.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think that he's supposed to come across as riveting in that, and it comes across as just like, all right, guys, yeah, and he just kind of walks off screen, and it's like that was a terrible speech, and everyone seemed to buy into it. But I I think that he's supposed to be impressive at that point, and if that's the case, they miscast him, I believe, or they didn't tell Richard Beymer that he really needs to, like, that's the moment where Lee Nollis becomes his true hero self, kind of, because he doesn't sell it that way. And his ending, to me, that's the only way his story could have ended, and I feel that it worked exactly the way that it should have worked, which is he gets shot. And him getting shot is his sacrifice, but it also gets him out of the responsibility he doesn't want. However, despite the fact that it was everything I would have expected, it falls flat to me for some reason. Like I don't think it really works at the very end.
You mean you didn't like as his dying words being like, "Oh, thank God."
I actually didn't mind his last words being that. I think that they undersold the moment a little bit. Like have him say something else before he says that. You know, just be like, Cisco, I'm glad to have met you, talk for 10 seconds, and then say, but at least I got out of my responsibilities or something. I would have felt that was fitting with the character.
See, I mean, I don't know. I was hoping he wouldn't be. Like, I was hoping that the arc of this character was now that he's, stepped over the threshold of actually stepping into the role that he doesn't want to step into, he would now... his new path would be, okay, now I have to go back to Bajor and be this person and be this
leader, basically.
Leader of the people. It's not as flashy of an ending as killing him, but I would have found that more interesting if he was like, this might not be what I want, but it's the role that I have, and I think I'm ready to take it on now, as opposed to just being like, oh, now he's a martyr and now he's strike him down, he'll be more powerful than he was as when he was alive.
Which is what Jarro says at one point in the thing. Like they need to capture him, they can't kill him. So he succeeded in that regard because they did kill him. Steven Weber killed him for no reason. And I mean the whole characterization thing. I didn't get the sense that the Steven Weber character was that big of a fundamentalist. You know what I mean? Like he didn't strike me as a circle Puritan or anything like that. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I think the failing is not having him in the scene when in the last episode where they go to the Circle hideout. Okay. Oh, right.
I think, because he kind of comes I had to rewind it a couple times in this episode because there was that sort of like aha moment where Steven Weber is revealed to be like, if not a member of the Circle, at least sympathetic to the Circle, but there's not really any emotion played by anybody in it.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure, like, oh, wait, did I miss something? Is he just discovered now, or is this the equivalent of, like, his employer stumbling upon his Facebook page?
Right. Or is he just having a disagreement with his general, kind of? You get the sense, like, is he just an officer who disagrees with his CO?
Yeah, I think I don't know. I could have done with a shot of him interacting with Frank Langella a bit, or even just something to put them in the same room together to plant the seed.
Right.
But I guess is the dad from Monster Squad, is there supposed to be like there's not supposed to be any sort of like, oh, he might be faithful to the Circle kind of thing with him, right?
The general? No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
No. He's on the straight and narrow, I think, is my impression of him.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. So yeah, I guess, I don't know, it was a little bit kind of weird. And also I kind of got lost a little bit too when they capture them in the holodeck, and then they send Steven Weber back to the general, and he doesn't tell him the information that he got.
Yeah, he doesn't notify them that the Cardassians are involved in the arms deal.
Yeah, I guess I didn't even really register that at the time as being like an underhanded kind of thing. I don't know.
Underhanded from Steven Weber's point of view, you mean?
Because later on they do this other thing where when they capture the general, Lee Nollis is just like, "Hey, I'm Lee Nollis. You might have heard of me." And then then they cut away, and the next thing that you see is the general being pissed off. Like I don't know. There was a little bit of a story gap in there for me that was a little bit hard to follow.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of those problems are just tying into it. It's a very rushed episode for what it's actually trying to do. Like they solve a lot of the problems down to the very end where Kira and Dax. I don't think we need to talk about the Kira and Dax subplot really. Maybe just the fact that Dax is still horribly miswritten and miscast, in my opinion. Like,
yeah, I have a question about her.
Okay.
So earlier in the episode, they talk about some of her other forms. One in particular being like super good at math.
Yeah,
or something.
Tobin Dax. Yep.
Yeah. Is the impression here that she can just will the information that he knew into her own brain?
It's basically that the symbiont inside of her knows everything that the previous hosts know. So the symbiont is supposed to be like a very intelligent, like knowledgeable creature because it's lived so many lifetimes.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Because I guess I was kind of expecting a different personality out of her or something.
No, she can just remember everything that the previous lifetimes have taught her, basically.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Because, I kept watching this going like, okay, well, I think something's going to happen with these guys because I assume she's going to have to call upon that other...
The warrior Dax, yeah.
Yeah, or something. I don't know. It was just something instead of just like bickering about cheesy flying dialogue and then, using the Force to shoot down planes.
No, Dax is just...
What was that? What was that one shot after they shoot that plane down? Unless it was their plane. Was it their plane that they show from the exterior crashing into the mountain?
Oh, I guess it is, but I thought that they had shot down the enemy plane at that time.
Yeah.
And I was looking at that crash. But it makes sense that it would be theirs because they're in the jungle after that happens. Yeah.
Yeah. That whole thing was... It was at the mercy of editing and commercial breaks, I think.
Yeah,
Jumping from point to point in that story.
I think it's just it highlights the weakness of the Dax character because the Dax doesn't act the way that I think that the character is supposed to be portrayed. Really, like you don't get the sense that she is a wise, well-knowing, calm lifetime, like a creature that's lived multiple lifetimes. You really don't get that sense from her.
Right.
And I think that's just a big problem with the writing and the performance and everything like that. But then they get to the end, they expose Minister Jarro, and Jarro has the weirdest farewell of a villain I think I've ever seen in my life, where he's just like, I endorse this investigation. Goodbye. And then just walks out the door. And that's the last we're ever going to see of Minister Jarro at this point.
Yeah, you'd think he would say something like fake news and then seize power.
Right, exactly. I thought he was going to beam out of there with like a Cardassian transporter beam or something. He'd be like, oh, we got away. But no, he literally just says, I endorse being investigated. I'll see you later. Let me know what the results are. And that's it. So, great performance from Langella again.
Oh, he's so good.
Yeah,
I love him. Like even the way when he's on the communicator, when they cut to his side of the communication, his posture is just so precise and unmoving as he's delivering this. He's just great.
Yeah, there's so many of the storylines are just saved by having the decent acting come along in it. But I get the only technical aspects I wanted to touch on are that I think that for an action episode, this is atrociously directed. It's like horribly directed. The scene where Lee Nollis and O'Brien get into a firefight in Odo's prison room.
Yep.
A, I don't know why they're in there in the first place. And B, I think they filmed that in 2 takes and they just had those scenes to edit from because you don't get any sort of like action cutting of the camera. It's really just you zoom in on O'Brien, you zoom in on people attacking them, and then you get a long shot of them running out of the hallway when the smoke grenade goes off, and that's the entire action scene. It's terrible.
Yeah, I've come to learn from, well, I guess all of Star Trek, but mostly TNG, that if you have an episode that's a lot of running around the ship, it's usually not very good.
Yeah, it looks bad. Looks really, really bad. And the other action scene is just the Cisco. I like how everyone on Deep Space Nine puts on like a casual blazer to fight in a war. Cisco has a nice red one, and O'Brien is wearing a leather one.
I was under the impression, I thought they were dressing more like Bajorans or something.
Oh, maybe they were. Maybe that might be true. Yeah, I don't know if that's true, but I can see how you would read that.
But they didn't go through go to the extent of getting a sweet nose piece like Dax did.
Oh, right. Yeah, and another pointless scene of the Dax storyline. And, I think that I like the idea of the invasion of DS9 and sort of losing control of the station. It's just, it's not really done very well here. They can't put up much of a fight, but the way that they fight back, their guerrilla tactics aren't really all that interesting. on any level. Like they basically just hide out for a long time.
It felt to me like a game of hide and go seek.
Yes, yeah.
Because like, they were popping out of like barrels and shit. Like it's a Western from the 30s.
Yep.
And it seemed like it seemed like on paper they were like, this is gonna be like Die Hard, but on the Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
And it just like the number for the budget just kept going down, and the time that they had kept going down. And then they're like, wait, we have to do how much time? It's crashing a ship on Bajor, and it just kept getting cut. The one thing I would like to say about the Kira and Dax subplot is you should never have to ask the question, is that a spider or a dog? And if you do, you're already dead.
I liked how they even made a puppet for it. It felt so unnecessary that they have this little like spider puppet that sort of like waddled away from them. It was odd.
Yeah, they honestly that line made me root for the Cardassians to destroy Bajor, because I have no use for dog-sized spiders in any planet.
Yeah, I did say that whole thing was very very sort of odd, and like a weird look at the insights of Bajoran culture and stuff like that. I suppose.
Did you know in Costa Rica they have giant spiders that scream?
Oh, really?
It's like my worst nightmare.
For no good reason, or just
and they eat birds.
Yeah,
they're like the size of dinner plates, and they eat birds, and they scream, and they travel in packs.
Well, fortunately,
no, thank you.
Yeah, we'll stay away from there. We don't need
to build a wall around that.
don't need to siege Costa Rica anytime soon.
Although they could just climb the wall though, because they're spiders. Oh, jeez, there's no winning.
The only decent, I think that the O'Brien stuff is bad. On the whole, I think this episode actually has occasionally some good character stuff. You mentioned the rationing scene. I kind of like that. The O'Brien stuff is really awkward and weird. I don't know why they're together at this point. I actually kind of liked the Bashir and Quark scene, where Quark is having to drag his suitcase full of latinum, and Bashir has to yell at him. That's a good scene between those two.
I like the Quark stuff all the way through this episode, actually.
Yeah.
I really liked the scene at the beginning with his brother, and I liked it later when he got the tables turned on him by his brother, and then later he's the scene with Bashir. Yeah, I thought he was really good in this episode.
Yeah, he's a he's the character with no ties to anything, so he's the one that can kind of play off of his own selfish interests and stuff like that. And I like the fact that in that scene with Bashir, he went back for his suitcase. He didn't abandon the money, which I felt would have been cheap. He actually went back and continued dragging it.
Yeah, he's just a good character that I think is a important character in these ensembles where you have a quote unquote hero team at the front of every story, because it's always interesting to have a guy. I think I've used the Transformers Beast Wars comparison before, but it's always good to have a character on your hero team who you can't completely trust.
Right. Yeah.
Because it just makes everything much more interesting.
And the last thing about Quark, what'd you think of? I thought it's kind of an important and distinguishing character beat that Sisko actually chokes him briefly in the start of it, where Quark delivers the bad news about what he's done, and Sisko grabs him by the neck. Something I don't think Kirk or Picard necessarily would have done.
No, definitely not Picard. Kirk, maybe.
I feel like, maybe, yeah. Well, let me. What's the? I suppose he might have grabbed him by the. Grabbed him by the jacket, I think, would be a Kirk move. I feel.
Yeah, that was more. The '60s was all about grabbing people by the lapels.
Yes, right. If it was a woman, he would have slapped him, and a man, he would have grabbed him by the lapels and made a day of it. But I think that we're done talking about this one. We'll wrap it up. We'll take a break. We'll play an audio clip, and me and Claire come back and we'll give our final thoughts, and then we'll read patron thoughts about the siege.
So can I ask you something?
Sure.
About Lee Nullis.
Mm-hmm.
Well, listening to Kira talk about all he was, all he did, all he was gonna do, she makes him sound like he was larger than life, like he was some kind of military genius. But the Lee Nullis I fought...
Chief, Lee Nullis was the hero of the Bajoran resistance. He performed extraordinary acts of courage for his people and died for their freedom. That's how the history books on Bajor will be written. And that's how I'll remember him when anybody asks.
Yes, sir.
All right, so The Siege, we're done with it. We're done with the Bajoran Coup arc. Let's see here. We will read some Patron thoughts. As always, if you guys support the show, patreon.com/the Pensky File, you can leave some thoughts about upcoming episodes that get read on the podcast. We'll go through these quickly. It's Holly McLaughlin writes, The Siege, quirk, rom, comedy is always good stuff. Lee Nollis' moment of inspiring, drawing out courage in his fellow Bajorans worked a lot better than these sorts of climactic speeches from heroic characters usually do. The Nollis stuff is just... What would be like your phrase to describe the Lee Nollis storyline after through all three of those episodes?
Unfocused, maybe?
Yeah, I might say uninspired or something like that.
Yeah, that's probably
maybe.
better. Yeah.
Yeah, it's,
like I like what I like the overall arc, I guess.
Yeah.
But they don't really spend enough time with it to really make it satisfying.
I feel like his arc kind of matched the quality of the episodes, too. It started out strong and eventually just turned into kind of nothing by the end of it. And it's like, whatever. Zam Nuclear Wessel writes, The Siege is interesting in retrospect as the first step of gradual escalation of villainy on Deep Space Nine. It's a little bit of spoilers, but I'll see if I can correct. The first major attack on the station is misguided Bajorans. Later, it is some other people. And then it is some species who are pretty evil, but at least have some kind of rationale. And then finally, we end with spirits. Joint Mango writes, The Siege, fire. Kyle Barra writes, The Siege, I don't buy Starfleet having to leave the station because while they should respect what Bajor says, the wormhole should take priority. They would never let the Cardassians take control of it, and what about the ships already in the Gamma Quadrant? The Federation wouldn't leave them to the peril of returning into Cardassian territory. Even though I think the logic is flawed, there's fun to be had. Most of the character work and plot of the arc is done by this episode, so action can take the forefront. I like seeing the station evacuated, and the huge set is now the backdrop for phaser fights, and they do some fun stuff with the concepts from Odo half-phase through a wall to the holodeck fake-out. The finale with Kira handing in the evidence seems rushed and anticlimactic, considering it's the ending of 3 episodes rather than just 1, but overall it's a fun episode. I didn't mention, they do a lot of Odo shapeshifting in this episode.
Yes.
They spent most of the budget, I assume. He becomes a tripwire, which is always the most effective way a shapeshifter can fight somebody. And he phases out of wall and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Oh, well, thank you, patrons, for writing in. People had more thoughts about the earlier episodes, which I think this one doesn't really... It's just kind of the wrap-up episode. But what are you going to give this one on our 1 to 5 scale, Clay?
I'd give it a low 3.
Okay. I'm going to give it a 2.
Like, meh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean 2.5. Low, high 2, low 3. Yeah, it's fine, I guess. There's nothing, much like my TNG scale was slightly adjusted based on, the worst TNG versus the best TNG. I'm starting to calibrate my Deep Space Nine scale a little bit by giving this episode, where the episode itself is kind of run-of-the-mill and not really memorable, I give it an extra boost because it's still working inside of what makes Deep Space Nine unique. Yeah. And it wasn't just a TNG recycled
script
kind of plot.
Over.
Yeah. Like it still felt like it felt like it fit the new kind of paradigm they've set for Deep Space Nine still. So.
Yes, I agree with that, and I just think it doesn't do anything particularly wrong. Maybe makes a couple of wrong choices, but it's just and it's not even like it's unexciting. Maybe exciting would be the wrong. It's not like it's boring to watch or anything. It's just kind of like there it goes, and it all wraps up, and that's kind of the ending. Right. And I just think going back to the status quo at the very end of it feels a little bit odd to me at this point, because I feel like DS9 is distinguishing itself from TNG at that point, where the storylines overlapping feels like it's having even more of an impact than I thought it would at this point. Like the universe that they live in is stationary as opposed to TNG, and so there's just stuff like the fact that we never see Minister Jaro again feels odd to me.
Yeah, he feels like he should come back, definitely.
We see the Vedics again. They'll continue to come back.
I did like
I didn't really have much to say about them.
I did like how Nurse Ratched basically threw him under the bus once she realized that it was no longer politically profitable for her.
I thought that was a little bit maybe of a confused performance. Maybe I think that she's supposed to throw him under the bus, right? Did you get that? I almost felt like the actress played it as though she was legitimately upset that he was backed by the Cardassians.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. I took it by the actual what was happening as her throwing him under the bus, but I feel like, yeah, it could have been, she could have played it that way a little bit more. So maybe, I don't know, maybe that wasn't the intention. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more snaky, or see the betrayal on Jaro's face or something like that. But then again, you never really see his comeuppance. He just kind of walks off.
Yeah, you don't see betrayal in his face, and conversely, you also don't see betrayal on her face either.
Right, yeah. All right, well, that's it. Clay gives it a week 3. I'll give it a strong 2, maybe something like that. We'll kind of meet in the middle at that point. Thank you very much for listening, guys. You can vote for what you thought the episode was on our rating on YouTube. If you're on there, you can click the little button. It'll show you the scale of what to do, and you can vote. Go to all the Facebook, Twitter, blah, blah, blah stuff. All those links are in the description. Support us on patreon.com/thepensky-file. $2 a month. You get extra stuff. We're doing our AMA podcast, which actually might come out before this will. I think it does. So you can check that out if you're interested. Listing our highest tier supporters goes to Stephen Cobb, Holly McLaughlin, Jay Stanley, Mike Burnett, Matthew Ross, Magpie Nest Productions, Ben Douglas, Tex Owlbear, Kyle Barrett, Joint Mango, Vincent Adultman, Tarek Latif, Rune Vendler. Thank you very much, everybody, for supporting the show. It makes it much easier to get everything done. It's greatly appreciated. And going into the new year, we should be able to keep some of the feedback we got from the survey. So regularity will be something that will improve, hopefully, going into the new year. That's my New Year's resolution. Aside of that,
all sorts of new sound effects.
That's
that
right.
You guys have been clamoring for.
That's
car horns.
We're gonna get that radio morning show host who just does the impressions and the sound effects and stuff. He'll just be a guy who sits in the background and does that.
Yeah.
Because I think the podcast should go in more of a morning zoo type approach at this point.
I've been saying that for years.
I think we're done. So we're done with the siege. That is the Bajoran Coup arc. So Clay, what's your quick thoughts about the first 3 episode arc on Star Trek?
I think overall it was fine.
Yeah.
This last episode, I think its biggest fault is that it didn't really feel like it was driving towards a big climax. Or maybe I can say that having watched all 3 as seeing how the last one fell kind of flat. I think they were fine. I think it doesn't entirely work as a really great multi-episode story, but I think for the first try it was solid.
Yeah, I think it does a better job of building the DS9 universe than actually being good. And I do think that I think in my ratings it went 4-3-2. Like each episode just got a little bit worse than the previous one before it, and that's kind of the way it is. But it's not bad, and it's a harbinger, I guess, of the way the series will eventually get in later seasons, where they won't call them an episode arc, but the episodes are directly tied into each other in a way. So that's about it. Guys, we're done with it. Siege is over. We'll be back with invasive procedures in a couple days, and that about wraps it up. So happy 2018. Happy New Year, everybody, and we will see you next time.